Hi, everybody. Welcome to your history class. And before I start my lecture, I'd like to share the screen. Remember last week, I wasn't able to find the video about the rise of Christianity. And I really think that that's an important thing for you to see. So we're going to start today's class with that video, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so hold on. Let me see if I can get it for you.
Any understanding of Christianity has to start with Judaism because Jesus was born a Jew and he grew up in the Jewish tradition. He was one of many teachers spreading his ideas in the Roman province of Judea at the time, and he was part of a messianic tradition that helps us understand why he was thought of not only as a teacher, but as something much, much more. Let's go straight to the thought bubble today. The people who would become the Jews were just one of many tribal peoples eking out an existence in that not very fertile crescent world of Mesopotamia after the agricultural revolution. The Hebrews initially worshipped many gods, making sacrifices to them in order to bring good weather and good fortune, but they eventually developed a religion centered around an idea that would become key to the other great Western religions. This was monotheism, the idea that there is only one true God, or at least that if there are other gods, they're total lameoids. The Hebrews developed a second concept that is key to their religion as well, the idea of the covenant, a deal with God. The main man in this, the big mocker, was Abraham. Not to make this too much of a scripture lesson, but it's kind of hard to understand the Jews without understanding Abraham, or Abram as he was known before he had his big conversation with God recorded in Genesis 17. When Abram was 90 years and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. And I'm gonna make a covenant with you and a bunch of cool things will happen, like you're gonna have kids and your descendants will number the stars and you can have all the land of Canaan forever. It's going to be awesome. I'm paraphrasing, by the way, thought bubble. So God promised that Abram would have kids with his wife, even though the dude was already like 99. God had chosen Abraham and his descendants to be a great nation. From this, we get the expression that the Jews are the chosen people. So some important things about this God. One, singularity. He, and I'm using the masculine pronoun because that's what Hebrew prayers use, does not want you to put any gods before him. He is also transcendent, having always existed, and he is deeply personal. He chats with prophets, sends locusts, etc. But he doesn't take corporeal form like Greek and Roman gods do. He is also involved in history, like he will destroy cities and bring floods and determine the outcome of wars and possibly football games. No, football games. Probably most important to us today, and certainly most important to Jesus, this God demands moral righteousness and social justice. So this is the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, and despite many ups and downs, the Jewish people have stuck with him for, according to the Hebrew calendar at least, over 5,700 years. And he has stuck by them too, despite the Jews being on occasion something of a disappointment to him, which leads to various miseries, and also to a tradition of prophets who speak for God and warn the people to get back on the right path lest there be more miseries. Which brings us back to our friends the Romans. By the time Jesus was born, the land of the Israelites had been absorbed into the Roman Empire as the province of Judea. At the time of Jesus' birth, Judea was under the control of Herod the Great, best known for building the massive temple in Jerusalem that the Romans would later destroy. And by the time Jesus died, and expanded Judea was under the rule of Herod Antipater, also unhelpfully known as Herod. Both Herods ultimately took their orders from the Romans, and they both show up on the list of rulers who were oppressive to the Jews, partly because there's never that much religious freedom in an empire, unless you are, wait for it, the Mongols. Or the Persians. Also, they were Hellenizers, bringing in Greek theater and architecture and rationalism. And in response to those Hellenistic influences, there were a lot of preachers trying to get the Jews to return to the traditions and the godly ways of the past, including the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Essenes and the Zealots. And one of those preachers, who didn't fit comfortably into any of those four groups, was Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus was a preacher who spread his message of peace, love, and above all, justice across Judea during his actually average length life for his time. He was remarkably charismatic, attracting a small but incredibly loyal group of followers. Jesus' message was particularly resonant to the poor and downtrodden, and pretty radical in its anti-authoritarian stance. He said it was easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to heaven. He said the meek were blessed, that the last would be first and the first would be last. All of which was kind of threatening to the powers that be, who accordingly had him arrested, tried, and then executed in the normal manner of killing rebels at that time: crucifixion. Two questions about Christianity. First, why did this small group of people believe this? And second, why and how did that belief become so widespread? Reason one, the Romans continued to make things bad for the Jews. In fact, things got much worse for the Jews, especially after they launched a revolt between 66 and 73 CE, which did not go well.
Right, that's the first revolt. We talked about that last week.
The temple and expelled the Jews from Judea, beginning what we now know as the Jewish diaspora. And without a temple or geographic unity, the Jews had to solidify what it meant to be a Jew and what the basic tenets of the religion were. This forced the followers of Jesus to make a decision. Were they going to continue to be Jews, following stricter laws set forth by rabbis, or were they going to be something else? The decision to open up their religion to non-Jews, people who weren't part of the covenant, is the central reason that Christianity could become a world religion instead of just a sect of Judaism. And it probably didn't hurt that the main proponent of sticking with Judaism was James, Jesus' brother, who was killed by the Romans. Reason number two is related to reason number one, and it's all about a dude named Saul. No, not that. Yes. Saul of Tarsus, thank you. Saul, having received a vision on the road to Damascus, became Paul and began visiting and sending letters to Jesus followers throughout the Mediterranean. And it was Paul who emphatically declared that Jesus followers did not have to be Jews, that they didn't have to be circumcised or keep to Jewish laws or any of that stuff. This opened the floodgates for thousands of people to convert to this new religion. And the other thing to remember about Paul is that he was a Roman citizen, which meant he could travel freely throughout the Roman Empire. This allowed him to make his case to lots of different people and facilitated the geographic spread of Christianity. And lastly, Christianity was born and flourished in an empire with a common language that allowed for its spread. And crucially, it was also an empire in decline. Like, even by the end of the 1st century CE, Rome was on its way down. And for the average person, and even for some elites, things weren't as good as they had been. In fact, they were getting worse so fast that you might have thought the end of the world was coming. And Roman religion offered no promise of an afterlife and a bunch of squabbling, whiny gods. Sorry if I offended adherents to Roman religion, but seriously, they squabble. So even though early Christians were persecuted by the Roman Empire and sometimes fed to the lions and other animals, the religion continued to grow, albeit slowly. But then as the Roman decline continued, Emperor Constantine allowed the worship of Jesus and then eventually converted to Christianity himself. And then the religion really took off. I mean, Rome wasn't what it used to be, but everybody still wanted to be like the emperor. And soon enough, there was a new Son of God on coins.
All right, that's just a little bit about Christianity that I didn't have the video for last week, and I just wanted to show you that. So today we're going to talk about Mesoamerica, okay? And this is the historical region in the southern part of North America, going down through Mexico and into South America, and parts of what we call California now, and probably parts of like Texas and that sort of thing. And it extends from central Mexico through Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and northern Costa Rica. So remember when we talked about people, we know that they originated in Africa or in Ethiopia, in those areas. But slowly people began to migrate to other areas. So the way, and we talked about this earlier, the way that people from Africa expanded is they went up to Europe and then through Asia, and they were able to cross because at that time there was a land bridge. The land actually joined between where Russia is and by Alaska, all right? And they were able to actually walk across the land bridge. and they started to migrate to North and South America. Okay, so people think that the first humans were present in 21,000 BC, okay? And they were hunters and gatherers, which meant that they moved from one place to another as the growth of vegetables or plants that they depended on ran out, and also if they overhunted and there wasn't enough to eat, or if it got cold. Remember, the ice age is around there too. So the ice age is going to cause problems as far as food. So once they were able to get large herds of animals and start farming, people began to live permanently in villages, all right? Because the reason why they were migrating was because they couldn't sustain themselves with food. But once the idea of agriculture and farming and raising a herd of animals becomes apparent to these humans, they're able to make a settlement, a village where they can live. And these people that we're going to be talking about are growing specific types of crops. They're going to grow corn. We always hear about indigenous people growing corn. Native Americans grew corn when the Pilgrims were here, and they showed the Pilgrims how to grow corn. They grew beans and squash and chili peppers, and they also grew cotton. Later on, these indigenous people, the people of Mesoamerica, began to create pottery, bowls, vessels to carry water in, pots to cook in, like bowls and pots to bang on their corn and grind it down. And that was about 2300 BCE. In Mesoamerica, we start to see some of the other things that we've seen in other areas, such as in Rome and in Egypt. Remember, we talked about in Egypt the Great Pyramids. They were done because they knew about math. Remember, the Great Pyramids were built by hand without any metal tools. Well, during that time in Mesoamerica, down in Mexico and going into the Latin American countries and then down further to South America, the step pyramids were being developed. And again, these were temples where prominent rulers were buried. The same thing, right? Egypt, the pharaoh, as soon as he got into power, they began to make this pyramid for him so he could put all his worthy goods in there so that when he went to the afterlife, he'd have those and there'd be people in there to help him in the next life. Same thing in Mesoamerica. Very interesting, right? They're both pyramid shaped, but these are more steps. They go like this. You'll see it when we do a video, okay? They go up instead of the smooth side. So that was something that was similar that was happening. In the area of San Lorenzo, the oldest center it was noted for is these gigantic, colossal, very, 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 very big carved heads. Okay, so in Mesoamerica, one of the things that they're noted for are these colossal heads. And some of them are 9 feet tall. So that's taller than we are, okay? In some cases, it's twice the height of some of us, all right? So they created these heads to represent human heads, and it was thought that they were portraits or depictions or carvings of powerful Olmec, O-L-M-E-C, rulers. In total, there are 17 heads. So I'm going to switch now to a video to give you an idea a little bit about Mesoamerica, and then and then we'll come back for some more of a lecture. Hold on, I'm getting there. Hold on, let's see if I can get this. All right, well, let's start with this.
There have been many theories as to where the first people to get to the New World originated from. And now, thanks to DNA, we likely have a definitive answer. Hey everyone, thanks for watching D News today. I'm Trace. We humans have a couple million years behind us, and it's taken us nearly that entire time to spread across this planet. Anthropologists know for a fact humans evolved in what is now Ethiopia and Somalia. Eventually, modern humans stood up and started walking out of Africa. But not long afterward, things got a bit blurry. By following the fossil record, humans moved from Eastern Africa into South Africa and over the Arabian Peninsula. And then over thousands of years, modern Homo sapiens migrated throughout Europe and Asia, supplanting or interbreeding with populations of Neanderthals and Homo erectus. Eventually, modern humans spread to the New World and populated there, or here, too. But how humans made it over here, and the map makes it look so far, has been a puzzle without a lot of answers and a lot of hypotheses. Until DNA was discovered. Before DNA, scientists looked at fossils and traits in the geologic record and theorized humans moved onto a land bridge, which existed between Asia and North America. The Bering Land Bridge probably conjures pictures of, well, like a tiny little bridge. But it's a bridge like France is a bridge from Spain to Germany. It's also called the Bering Plain. It's humongous. The land bridge was a massive amount of land which connected the two continents of Asia and North America.
On this side we
People
have
moved onto
Alaska,
the
the other
bridge
side we have
23,000
Russia.
years ago, then moved off of the bridge maybe 15,000 years ago. That's what we thought. And now new science has confirmed most of that theory and added even more specifics as to how first peoples or Native Americans found their way onto this continent. A new paper in Science sequenced the genomes of 23 ancient individuals and 31 living native peoples and found a very specific genetic history. DNA carries with it a step-by-step record of interbreeding and adaptation in its billions of quad-coded nucleobases. Since the human genome was completely sequenced in 2003, we don't know what everything in there does, but we do have this baseline. And here's what happened. No more than 23,000 years ago, Amerindians, as they called them in the paper, moved from Siberia in a single wave and settled in the north for thousands of years. From there, they split into two groups about 13,000 years ago. We know that the glaciers were receding about then. That meant the land bridge was shrinking. One group settled throughout North America, and the other settled in Central and South America. Incredibly, they pinpointed the 13,000-year split figure based on DNA from the remains of a single 12,600-year-old boy. As they sequence more ancient individuals, though, they're going to get even more precise migration estimates. But that's not all. They also answered the long-wondered question, where did these people originate from? According to the genetic information, Native Americans have a small mix of genes from East Asians and Austro-Melanesians. Australoid and Melanesians are two racial classifications, which include Southeast Asian hunter-gatherers, Papua New Guineans, Solomon Islanders, Vanuatuans, and indigenous Australians. Somehow, people from as far away as remote islands in the South Pacific and Australia were able to make their way across the world to the New World. It's mind-boggling to think of ancient people migrating so far and mixing with the locals. But today, more than 80% of our planet has seen influence from human activity. Studies like this show us just how little we know about how we got here and how much of an impact we have made in such a short time on our Earth. Do you have a curiosity that we might be able to quench? Tell us in the comments. And for a full recounting of how we all got where we are now, check out my new show, Test Tube Plus. We spent 5 episodes in a series on humanity and where it came from.
So that was pretty interesting that these people were able to travel from even Australia to the New World. And through DNA, scientists have been able to see that different DNA from different races and people from different areas have been intermingled together from when people were migrating. In Mesoamerica, the civilizations consisted of the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Olmers, and the Incas, 4 major empires, okay? We're going to talk briefly about what each empire discovered or had or did that made them famous or strong. And then you can see that many different things are starting to evolve in Mesoamerica. The Mayans were part of Mesoamerica, and they were the Maya people, okay? They were highly developed in writing. They created a system of writing that was very well developed. The pre-Columbian Americans, which were the Mayans, were also very talented or very good with art and architecture and mathematics. Now, why do I mention mathematics? Remember, I'm telling you that those pyramids were built. Now, remember when we talked about Egypt, we talked about the fact that the Egyptians were very well versed, very educated in mathematics. So that way they could figure out how to build that pyramid. And again, in Mesoamerica, we're seeing people who are very good with mathematics. They also have a calendar, and they also know about astronomy and the stars, okay? So a lot of those things are very similar there that we saw over in Asia. The Mayans lived in the northwest part of the Isthmus of Central America, in the northwest part on that side, if we're looking at the map, in an area called the Yucatan, okay, Yucatan. And that's now part of southern Mexico, and it goes through Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. So this is where the Mayans lived. They're known for their temple pyramids. They are step pyramids, and you'll see about that. And they, again, were built without metal tools, just like we saw with the Egyptians. So that meant a lot of slaves were used to put bricks and to carry them from different areas that they had to make these bricks, and just go over to Home Depot and get them and put them together so that their rulers would have a final resting piece. The next group are the Aztecs. And they did the twin pyramids, and they had 2 temples, and they had 2 ramps on which to worship the gods, okay? And they lived between 1300 and 1521 BC, okay? And they're known for their agriculture, their growing of crops and farming, okay? So remember, the crops and the farming and that kind of agriculture causes people to live closer together in towns. And their art and their architecture were very well developed. They had, again, writing skills that were on a very high level. They too had a calendar system, and they were building temples all over. And they were known to be extremely fierce, okay? And they would, to please the gods, they would do human sacrifices. Sometimes you'll see like a movie like Indiana Jones, and they'll all be beating the drums, and there's fire, and they're on a cliff, and they throw the person down, and it's to appease, to please the gods. Well, they were into human sacrifices. And the word Aztec means someone who comes from an unknown location in Mexico. They were also called the Mexica. That was what Mexico was called originally. They survived, they thrived, they did really well for over 200 years. And They would trade with other tribes in other areas. So they would get different kinds of food, different kinds of things to make clothing, and they would learn different cultures. They were also known to be the first people to discover chocolate. So I love them because I love chocolate. And what they believed was that the cacao beans that you make chocolate out of were a gift from the gods. They knew that this chocolate was something special. So who would it come from? But from the gods, okay? So we know that chocolate comes from that area. Now, again, we talked about Egyptians and their building and the pyramids. The same sort of building, same mathematics, same thing about calendars. And both were making pyramids for their rulers. Also, some of you might know of a holiday called the Day of the Dead. It is a holiday that the Mexicans will celebrate, and it is at Halloween, and it is to celebrate those people who have passed. And one of the reasons they do it is to remind people to keep those people who have passed away in our hearts and not fear the dead, okay? The Day of the Dead. Now, they worshipped many different kinds of gods, gods for happiness, gods for rain, gods for the sun, all of those things. So let's see if I can get you the next video that I'd like you to see based on what I was just talking about. Come on. All right. This is really weird. I'm not getting these videos. I wonder why. Hold on. I'm sorry that I can't get the videos today, but it's not a problem. We can look at them. I'll check and see what's going on next week with them. And if I have to, we'll watch them at the beginning of the class. I'm so sorry about that. So let's look a little bit about the Incas. Is that really? All right, so we'll talk about the Incas, another group, okay? And around 1200 BCE, the Incas grew from a very small tribe living in the Andes to an organized tribe, and they were ruled by the Inca king. And he was called the Inca. And he was worshipped as the child of the sun god, all right? The sun god. So it was pretty important to be the son of the sun god, okay? And in less than 100 years, the Incas developed into a mighty empire that stretched along the Pacific coast of South America to modern-day Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, and northwest Argentina.